Good morning, NFL fanatics. This is the NFL Insiders here on Singles channels 249 and 250 across social media on all platforms, 138 of them to be exact. Just want to remind you to go to the iOS and Android stores to download the Single app where you can watch all our programming. As well, remember that Cinco TV can be found across Amazon Fire and Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku and Roku 6, and in all TVs 2016 and forward. Well, as you can see from the picture, we have the regulars of the show, the guys that saved my life every single weekend, Mr. O.B. Spencer and Mrs. Kurt Churchson. And today, special day, our CFL insider, Mr. Candid Frank Stanishi. Well, today is a special day. Today is Wing Day, Burgers Day, Fries Day. Anything that you can consume that will get you a heart attack, you will consume it today, starting at 6 o'clock. Because what it is, Super Bowl Sunday, what we've been waiting since early May for. So, this is one special weekend because the two teams that are in the final of this Super Bowl were two teams that weren't supposed to be there. Uh, Mr. Burrows and his Cincinnati Bengals, and the the wonderful hosts, the LA Rams and Stafford. So, gentlemen, where do we go here? Because I think it's going to be an upset, and a lot of people in LA are going to be crying after this one is over.
Can I just point out, I guess I'll start this, that for starters, I believe the Cincinnati Bengals technically are the home team, which is ironic because basically they're playing in a road stadium. But irrespective of that, every time I have bet against the Cincinnati Bengals in this postseason, I have been wrong. I've been straight up wrong, and I will be the first to admit that. I'm still going to go against them on this one, going with LA in this specific case. But I will point out that since 2010, anytime a team that has been an underdog by 3 or more points, and the Bengals are underdogs by 4, that underdog team has straight up won the Super Bowl 5 out of the last 6 times. The only time that did not happen was when the Atlanta Falcons blew their lead to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. So there's good history, ironically enough, when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals being the underdogs yet again. So this is a toss-up in some ways, but I'm still going to go with LA on it.
So I'm going
the odds are on your. I'm sorry, Scott. The odds are on your side. Go ahead.
What's that?
The odds are on your side. You can't be wrong forever.
Right. And I mean, that's a smaller period of time than if we go back to when the Giants trounced Denver. I mean, I think Denver was, got trounced like at 6-point underdogs in like all their early Super Bowls. When the NFC East and the 49ers were winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, they were big underdogs that got trounced. So something to keep in mind that we go in trends. One of the things I do think that the NFL has succeeded in doing what they wanted to do 2 years in a row now. They've tried to make the quarterback so important that you needed a great quarterback to get to the Super Bowl. And we've now seen it literally, it's taken a while, but we've seen it 2 years in a row where the quarterback isn't even the story because both teams have a super quarterback. Which then means maybe we have to look at some other parts of the game. And in this game, in my mind, it's all about the trenches. LA has a better offensive line and a defensive line. And I saw the Super Bowl last year. I did with my own eyes. And when Cincinnati picked Chase, I yelled at them for not watching the Super Bowl. And maybe getting a talented player who's that awesome in a skill position during the regular season and even during the playoffs help. But I feel like it's going to catch up on them. So I put my money where my mouth is. I am taking Cincinnati to cover that 4.5 points, but I am taking outright the Rams, and I expect this to be a relatively high scoring game. As good as that Rams defense is, I expect the over. So, yeah, I just think that right now Aaron Donald is the story of this game because they're going to have to double team him. He's going to beat the double teams, and that leaves Leonard Floyd and Super Bowl MVP Von Miller, not that I'm calling him this Super Bowl MVP, but he has won it, an opportunity to really harass Burrow, who has some escapability, but this is a lot to ask of him. And I don't see him surviving if he gets 9 sacks. I don't see Cincinnati surviving if he gets 9 sacks against this offense like he did against Tennessee's offense.
Obi, I agree with you with one small qualifications, both qualifications for both quarterbacks. I think this is an opportunity for them to show that they're great. I don't think they're great quarterbacks at this point, but I don't disagree with the fact that it could end up being true, right? I'm just saying this is the last step before one of them gets a chance to prove they are great. Because without winning a Super Bowl, I don't know how you can even define yourself as a great quarterback. I know there have been quarterbacks that have been really great, and in the Hall of Fame and all that. I could think of one that played in Miami. That
one in Buffalo too.
Run in Buffalo, yeah, one real big one in Buffalo, with all those opportunities. So yeah, so I agree there, and I also agree with the defense and Donald being the threat that he is. I just happen to think that it really helps. One of the reasons why the Super Bowl is but to Scott's point, why the Super Bowl ends up being an underdog friendly game is simply because of all the hype. It's a very heavy hype, and it actually penetrates every little corner of every player's mind. And so all a team that's an underdog has to do is prove that they can win. And the only reason Atlanta lost is because there's only one way to say it, and that is Tom Brady. I mean, that's when you want to talk about great quarterbacks. I think the irony is fantastic that he retires, before the Super Bowl, that will probably have one of the great quarterbacks in the future, Burrow, having an opportunity to prove that he is not necessarily a replacement for Brady, but one that could.
So yeah, I would like to commend you on your great status, and I don't want to get into a verbal quibble about different levels, great versus elite. So, and in general, though, I do think we can agree that in the playoffs, both quarterbacks have been great, and therefore the NFL got what it wanted, and definitely better than having what was conceivable, Jimmy G versus Tannehill. So that will be my counter argument for great. And to the Tom Brady point, I think Tom Brady, one of the things about Tom Brady, and that Super Bowl shows it, and we saw it against the Rams, Tom Brady's greatness, I don't think can be compared to, let's say, Peyton Manning or Dan Marino in his time or Dan Fouts in his time, guys who were just physically the greatest. Tom Brady's greatness needs to be compared to Tiger Woods. The mythos of him that he had on the other teams. Just like when Tiger Woods started the day in the lead in the major, nobody else could play golf that day. They were just like, oh, we can't catch him. If Tiger Woods shoots par, everybody shoots 3 over. It just, the mythos of Tom Brady, we saw it in the Rams' heads with fumbles and bad snaps. We saw it in Atlanta. The same thing. Like, no excuse other than the offense couldn't get it done because they were fearful of what was on the other side. They got so tight. And we are losing that. And that's interesting. And the other side is, Frank, I think you're 100% right. We're about to find out who that next batch of truly elite quarterbacks are. I don't think if Stafford wins, he becomes elite. He's got a lot of history still to make up for it. Burrow will have some time to prove he can be. We've already sort of thrown Mahomes in there, but is he only going to be good like Wilson was? Like, is he about to go on a downslide? So that's next season stuff. We are, we need a new level of guys that we can say these 4 or 5 guys on your team are going to get you automatically. Doesn't matter what you put around them. And Burrow is tantalizingly close to that. I don't think Stafford is. I think Stafford is a guy who you can win a Super Bowl with, but needs other people around him, which is fine. Eli Manning won 2 like that, so did Big Ben. But we're going to see next season which one of these guys is really going to be up there. Allen's another one in that story. So
Yeah, Mahomes and the Chiefs are my team. If he doesn't win that Super Bowl, where does he fit in the picture, right? Because that's
right.
a slippery slope, right? Thank goodness for him he won that Super Bowl, because if he doesn't win that Super Bowl, he becomes a lot like that quarterback in Miami.
Yeah,
Yes,
but if he doesn't win that Super Bowl, he also doesn't get a $500 million deal either.
No kidding.
But I
Oh,
mean,
we're talking football, right? We're not talking salary, are we? Are we talking salary?
Well, one I think tied to the other in this particular case.
We're talking making salary today, so that's true. That's so 100% true. The value of these two quarterbacks will exponentially rise depending on the result of this game.
Yes,
So-
and
Sorry, go ahead.
on the other hand, I'm going to take this somewhere where Scott was talking pre-show, because we are talking about this, and one of the things about quarterback salaries that's become fascinating to me is there was a time whenever who the new free agent was, he got the most money.
Mhm.
And we're seeing that stop. And we're really seeing teams say, yo, you know what's a good idea? Paying our quarterback $20 million and building around him. And the guy in Arizona who decided to turn off his connection to the team is kind of going to be facing that. He's shown that he gets tired at the end of every season. And now he's like, well, I want more money and I want this and I want that. And they're like, we're in control here. I see this guy getting a 5th-year extension and possibly all 3 years of getting the franchise tag before he gets a long-term deal. And he might get less than the franchise tag when that happens. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams really start to go, you know what? We can't put this percentage of our salary into a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers can't win us a Super Bowl, but a young Mahomes, who didn't have a lot of money tied in, did. A younger Wilson, before he had his big contract, did. And the stellar example, of course, is Brady, who, when the top quarterbacks were getting 40, he was getting 20 plus whatever TB12 money Patriots are paying him on the side. But in terms of salary cap structure, it was that middle number that you could build around him. And, the stats were dropped. How many top 10 defenses Brady had during his run versus the other great quarterbacks. So it does tie into salary, I think, as Scott said, that Joe Burrow might be about to make himself a lot of money, but does he want to? Because the Baker Mayfield model might be the better way to make long-term money. Who cares if you're good? Just be good enough to get $20 million and make commercials.
Maybe that's why winning the Super Bowl for Mahomes might have led to the decision that he and the team made as far as his salary is concerned, right? Well, we did it.
Yeah.
We got there.
But the thing with your Chiefs, though, is it's not like they were a one and done and fail. I mean, they've challenged every single year, and by all accounts, frankly, should have, were it not for, in my mind, a 4th and goal screen pass, been in the Super Bowl this year as well. And it's not like basically, I mean, with Eli Manning, you mentioned Eli, he was hit or miss. The Giants team was more of a lightning in a bottle type win those 2 times. With somebody like Patrick Mahomes, with some of the other quarterbacks that are out there, you can build, where you're going to be come December. You don't have to ask. Next year, in all likelihood, in some facet or form, the Kansas City Chiefs will be at least challenging for a playoff spot at a worst case scenario, if not somehow in some way running the table, because this year is going to piss them off what happened. So that's the difference between Patrick Mahomes and like an Eli or even a Ben. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but see, so that's my point. We hear a lot of talk about getting that franchise quarterback. Those guys who put you in that spot every year, there's 4, maybe 5 guys in the NFL. And if you have to say those 4 or 5 guys are changing, then you were wrong about that guy to begin with. So right now, if you ask me, I only have 2 guys who I feel are in that role right now who are going to put you in the playoffs just by being on your team. One's Mahomes. The other one is, I almost called him Favre, is Rodgers. Everyone else, I'm waiting to see. Maybe Allen's there. Maybe Burrow's going to be there. Herbert obviously isn't there yet. And so, we just lost one in Brady. We lost Manning 3 or 4 years ago, and we lost Breeze. Like, those were the guys, and now they're gone. So we're going to see who those new guys are in the NFL. So unless you have one of those 4 or 5 guys, don't pretend you do. Don't do what Baltimore did and pretend Flacco's that guy. Do what the Giants did it because Manning wasn't always the highest paid quarterback. But they had this other guy with a gap in his teeth who's now all over TV, who dominated the other side of the ball because salaries were able to match. They had decent lines. They had a good running. And so I think you're more likely to build around a lightning in a bottle quarterback. Even Stafford, who I think is right on that next tier, who needs less weapons around him, can make offensive better. You still need to give him a defense. And that's what the Rams did. They said, hey, we're going to pick and choose which guys we give this money to. And we're giving it to a select group. But those names are all fantastic. Ramsey, great season. Donald, great season. Miller comes over, does well. OBJ, they give him less because they don't have to pay him. Comes over, do well. Stafford, of course, the quarterback. And they have a decent array of running backs who they're paying cheap. They're not falling into what the Cowboys did, who are screwing themselves by giving all that money to Elliott. Sorry, Eduardo, your Cowboys are going to be bad because Elliott's getting their money and he's already passed his hill. So that's what coming on with the salary, which Frank brought up, matters so much.
To go further into what you're saying, I guess so the listeners and viewers aren't confused. A lot of the reasons why a team wins the Super Bowl, or any sport really, because they're all caps now, they're different caps, but they're all capped. One of the main reasons why teams win championships is when players on the team, especially the key players, because they're usually the ones that help make the decision, make a conscious decision, not through talk, not through promise, but through action. And that is take a little bit of a haircut on their salary and ensure, now here's the tricky part, ensure the team does something with that haircut. You know, that's the other problem, right? There are players out there who've tried to do that and they've gotten, well, there's no other way to say it. They get screwed, right? Because the team makes a mistake. So, you know, what you're saying is 100% right. And this is the thing about sports, right? You have to decide. You talked about a bunch of guys that have come over to LA. Those guys are coming there not for the money, but for what they all want. And 100% of the players that play sports want to win a championship, but not 100% of them understand how.
True indeed.
I think you wrapped up this entire conversation in a bow, Frank. Absolutely. Eduardo, where are we going now after that bow from Frank?
Did I throw the mic down? I didn't even realize.
I think
exactly.
you did. I do think you did. That was beautiful. That was right on.
It was good.
So there's a couple of things that I want to touch on. First is from the environment of what Sophie Stadium brings to the Super Bowl, because it's a different. It's going to be a different atmosphere altogether for the first time in Super Bowl history. I think the atmosphere that stadium has, technology-wise, everything makes a different view of the game. There is going to be more cameras on the game for analysis than ever before in a Super Bowl, and I think that's one thing that no one seems to understand, what the vantage point of calls and how can you review the game itself for the officiating staff. That's a great vantage point. What do you guys think?
I don't think it'll be that much different as far as this goes. I think the fact that it's LA just has this certain glitz and Hollywood glamour to it. But the Super Bowl, by and large, itself already has glitz and glamour to it. So I don't know necessarily if it's going to change as far as the cameras and everything like that goes. My over-under, though, is how many times will the camera be pointed on a celebrity who happens to be there? My over-under is probably about 35. You know, insert whatever celebrity, actor, stunt person, whatever, athlete's going to be there. Because of the fact that it is LA, it is higher profile in that regard. But as far as everything that happens on the field or camera work related to the field, I don't think that's going to change that much.
So
maybe technically it won't change that much. But what you've raised the major issues here. LA is the franchise, even though they're not the only ones that play in that stadium. are the franchise that was missed for a very long time. There was
Mhm.
as lusterful as the NFL was, without LA, it didn't have as much shine.
Mhm.
And that's why this game is so important in my mind, is that it's LA back, basically in the NFL
Mhm.
with that kind of stadium. They left because they had a stadium that had had its best days. And now they're coming back with this stadium. And to Eduardo's point, yeah, the technology is going to be great. The newness of the stadium, the way the stadium will look, it'll have an impact. But usually when you have a Super Bowl, it's usually in a pretty good venue. So, in that sense, that's why I agree with you, Scott, that it
Mhm.
really doesn't make that much difference because the venues are usually pretty good and they get spruced up pretty well.
Mhm.
And I think another
So,
thing that we have to.
oh,
Sorry, Obi.
well, first I wanted to address Scott's over under. I'd like you to think on that and how many will be NBC celebs versus how many will be
Oh
non-NBC
boy.
celebs.
Oh, good
That's
Lord.
the number
Yeah.
I want you to give me.
What's the over under on that one? That's a really good point.
NBC or NBC affiliates would include MSNBC and Peacock.
That's
Especially
right.
Peacock.
All of them.
Anything
And
that could put money into NBC's
Oh
pocket.
God, yeah, I didn't think of that.
absolutely. They might even make some comments about the Olympics, right?
Probably
Yes,
They'll
do,
make
I
that
think.
connection too.
yes.
I don't think anybody cares about the Winter
But-
Olympics. That's a conversation for another time.
But to Eduardo's original question, and like Frank is right, every Super Bowl, they're advancing technologically rise because they're always using the newest stadiums and the better stadiums and rewarding those cities by giving them the Super Bowl, except for when they finally gave the one. No, even New York was newer. MetLife was newer
Yeah,
at
it
the
was.
time. So I do wonder if Eduardo, there will be a call. There already is in the Super Bowl, always an angle on a call that's different than we normally get that may or may not influence throwing a red flag. And so sometimes we get bogged down in Super Bowl because there's that extra 8 camera angles. But we want to get the call right. We all still to this day want to know if Franco Harris caught the ball, right? I mean, we still don't know. And so that's what these extra cameras give us. Did that ball get caught? And probably it hit the ground and he didn't trap it. So he would have caught it and then not caught it by the rules and then caught it by the rules and then not caught it by the rules. So it all doesn't matter. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see, some of those things. And the flip side is we used to use these camera angles because we'd get these great views of these violent hits. And now we're like, maybe we don't want to show the violent hits. And Anthony Crumride's leg shaking in the air when it gets compound fractured. So in the end, Scott and Frank are right. It's the hottest city in the hottest stadium. The bigger issue is what does 90 degrees mean versus what does the stadium mean?
Absolutely. With all the talk about bringing the game to New York and all the concern about the cold, that the possibility of cold or snow or whatever, it ended up being a pretty nice day for a football game. So
It was like 55 degrees here yesterday. So
yeah,
Well, it's snowing today.
yeah, a tiny bit. It's not, dude. I'm not even gonna have to shovel this. It's already off the streets.
I mean, that's one of the other points I wanted to bring to the table. I mean, the weather factor is going to be a great game for both cities, both teams that are involved, because they don't have to deal with the weather. Let's remember the wonderful game in Minnesota, the Super Bowl in Minnesota. That was a dandy one. I mean, I felt like the players were skating down the field, not running. But I mean, it's going to be nice to see a game in LA. But one of the things that I think is a distractor from the game, and we always say it's the wonderful halftime show. It takes away from what the game is all about. We are talking about two football teams that play the best, and basically a lot of people watch the Super Bowl just for the halftime show instead of watching what's important and not giving the players the respect they deserve.
I think they get it, Eduardo. I think they get it. I think the thing about the Super Bowl is it's more than a football game. It's an event. And the halftime is basically the exclamation point about it being an event. I don't think it dwarfs the game at all. I think what it does is it offers the people who are interested in the game a chance to go have some more wings and some more beer. And the people who made the wings and got the beer a chance to enjoy the game as well. I look at it that way. I look at it as a positive because it basically it makes. I know it sounds silly to talk about the NFL and inclusion right now, but it does make it more inclusive, right? It brings families to the game. So, and we're talking young and old, right? And we're talking male and female. And it's the reason why the Super Bowl is, the highest watched, program on television. I think it still is.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I
it's losing ground quickly.
So
I mean, well, it's losing ground on TV itself is going down. So I think it's declining, but in declining, one of those was the opposite of water raises all ships, water decreases, it sinks all ships. But to that point, I think the Super Bowl halftime show is one of the great things that we get. We don't get a free concert like this anywhere else. Like the Grammys, there's like different songs, but they're not one show. It doesn't have that full feel. You don't get a free concert like this anywhere else, and that I love about it. But to counter Frank's point about the family, so I've already said this once on Tuesday in the Sports Den. America, they're going to sing about drugs. They are going to sing about degrading women. They may dance with half-naked women on stage. Don't talk to me about how you weren't ready for this and the children. Look at those acts. Look what they've done. I know Snoop is now with Martha Stewart and isn't the felon, but he is the king of weed in some aspects. So enjoy the show, but know what you're about to watch. Scott, to your sign language.
So just before you come in, Scott, and Frank brought a great topic, inclusion. And it's funny to say it because the performer lineup for this show, I am not saying that it's right or wrong, but it's not very inclusive. If you look at the lineup, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Snoop Dogg with all his problems as of recent, which they were thinking
of came out, yeah.
They were thinking of taking him out, but Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, Mary J. Blige. I mean, with the amount of celebrities that you have and artists that you have in LA, do you think they could have made it more inclusive so that all?
No, they're targeting.
Absolutely,
I understand they're targeting.
No,
targeting and being politically correct.
Leaving that part out for a sec, this is my take on this. One of the articles that we did, Eduardo, you saw it for La Portada, is the fact that the 18 to 35 demographic for the Super Bowl has been dropping dramatically every single year. It has dropped every single year. Actually, the Super Bowl ratings overall have dropped, and the NFL knows it. Now, for people like me, my choice of music is, ironically enough, 70s soul, Earth, Wind, and Fire type things like that, or European power metal. Give me Dragon Force, give me, Stradivarius, things like that. I am not the demographic here. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to hit the younger generation a little bit by blending between basically what they would consider to be oldies, but stuff that they can connect with better than the stuff that I can connect with. I mean, you're not going to see Odin up there on stage. I get that. You're not going to see anything like I said, or Bon Jovi. You're going to put it something a little more local. You're going to see stuff that's going to target that market. Now, I threw a question out there on Reddit last night because I figured Reddit was a great way of being able to be non-partial to sports and non-sports. I asked the question simply, knowing that these five are basically knowing what the halftime show is, are you more, less, or the same amount of interest in the Super Bowl? I got two predominant responses from around the world. One, I don't even know who's playing and I don't care about the Super Bowl. Or two, yes. Because Reddit is predominantly a younger person's market. They were more interested in the Super Bowl because of the people that were actually doing the halftime show. And I think that's what the NFL was going for here. They're trying to actually hit and pull back some of the old market that they've been losing over the course of the last decade. Now, the ratings are going to see if I'm right or wrong. I could be right 1,000% wrong and look remarkably stupid in the process. But my gut is telling me that this was a target that they deliberately did, knowing the fact that because of the fact that the younger generation is a little more urban in their music types, than some old farts like we are. They went that way deliberately with this, knowing that it's a little bit provocative, a little more edgy, but knowing that the numbers are going to spill over to the Super Bowl because people that wouldn't normally tune in will tune into the halftime show for that.
So I have been pushing back on Scott with this. I mean, in general, I think that, yes, that's the group. But we know that The Weeknd has a much less over 40 fans than Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. So they're actually trying to get over 45 fans with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, both guys whose first albums were in the early 1990s. So the 45 plusers were basically in high school. Maroon 5 is for a younger audience than this group was. Timberlake's about this age group. Lady Gaga, much younger audience than this group is. Coldplay, a much younger audience than this group is. Katy Perry, a younger group. Bruno Mars, a younger group. Beyonce, a younger group. You have to go back to Madonna in 2012 to get somebody whose albums are as old as this group.
But here's the one thing that you're not saying there. You're mentioning name, not names. You got 5 here. You got people. I mean, listen, Snoop is as relevant now. He might be more relevant now than he was back then. Because
not musically.
No, but that doesn't matter. Because people are still seeing him in Corona commercials. He's still doing play-by-play for Logan Paul, Jake Paul fights. I mean, he is more relevant now than I think he ever has been.
So I'm not arguing his relevance. I'm arguing his focused on that younger crowd. I'm agreeing with you. Snoop Dogg is much bigger, much broader. This group of people is much broader and more focused to an older generation as well as a younger generation than many of the other acts we've seen recently. Other than Shakira and J-Lo, I don't think we had, like I said, we had to go back to Madonna to have an act that had a song out in 1993 or 4. And she was even older than Snoop Dogg, right? She's an 80s icon. And that's my point. I agree with you that there's sort of a focus on making sure they get the young and don't put them off. But this is definitely, let's get everybody.
You guys are both right. I hate to disagree with both of you and agree with both of you. But you're both right.
You cover all bases here, aren't you?
No, seriously, you both are right, because the whole reason why they're having so many artists like they haven't had before, it's been top artist and a guest, right? That's been basically what they've done, roughly speaking. Yeah. Now what they've done is that they are going with the spectrum, and you're both right. Because if you hear what you're both saying the same thing, that they've got young people that are good for today. They've got older folks that, yes, I agree that Snoop Dogg's relevant today, and maybe even more relevant today than he was in the past, but he still draws on those people in the past. I think what they're doing is politically correct. And by that, what I wanted to clarify what I'm saying, because I don't want people to misunderstand it. Politically correct in the sense that they're trying to be inclusive. They're trying to widen the scope, but always remembering that the NFL has not been very good to the black culture. And that's the main reason why this entertainment always comes down to this, because it's the easiest way for the NFL and the people that run the NFL to salute the black culture. They can't do it with coaches. They can't do it with general managers. They can't do it with owners, but they can do it with musicians and artists. So, they can have at it. But at the end of the day, the people that are out there, they're not buying it for that reason. So they'll just watch and enjoy the show. But it doesn't change what the NFL is. And they have problems. And it's great that they do this kind of stuff and acknowledge, Black America. But they got to do a better job of including them
do you think they're doing
other than the halftime.
So do you think it's being done to placate the community?
Well, it's always been done to placate the community. It's always, the artists are there to entertain the players. That's who they're there to entertain, and the people that are watching, because, there isn't a sport. Can we agree on this? There is not a sport that contains more conservative people than football.
So, guys, just looking at Twitter,
I'm going to pass on that, but I will say that the fact that we have there's a big deal about AJ Perez being interested in the Denver Broncos may or may not dispute what you're saying.
I'm not trying to be right here. I'm just trying to point something out.
So just so that I was just looking at a Hollywood Insider tweet just now, and a new name has been added to the list of performers, and that's
The
Pitbull.
Pitbull's been added.
Pitbull is
Well,
going.
because
Pitbull is going to be
He's just there.
performing, and now that doesn't surprise me because now they are trying to attract the Latin community of LA.
Dude,
Inclusive. They're doing their best to be inclusive because that's the crime they're being accused of.
That's why I said that I felt that it wasn't inclusive enough because if you are talking about LA, you are leaving the Hispanic fans out by not putting an act. But now Pitbull has been added, therefore, and they are saying that there might be appearances by 50 Cent and Ice Cube too. So that will over.
has Pitbull been officially added, or is that a rumor?
I haven't found anything on that. I just looked that up now.
As far as this insider goes, from I was just looking at the tweet. It says Pitbull officially will make an appearance at Super Bowl.
Appearance. Okay, well, appearance doesn't mean
appearance. That's a whole lot of possibilities for what he will and will not do. I mean, Pitbull's on everybody's album. Pitbull's is everywhere. Has been for quite some time. So I'm sure there's a song that Pitbull's been on one of these folks' albums with.
Oh, with Eminem, he has played with Eminem on multiple songs.
Yeah. So I'm sure, like that. The point being, but an appearance versus being on in a song is you're talking about adding a lot of people, so nobody gets their own thing. But don't these guys have to pay for the show themselves?
Yeah.
So they might.
Also, keeping in mind that the amount of work and choreography that has to go into a performance like that, not just by them, but by the literal hundreds to hell, even thousands of people that are behind the scenes handling this stuff. I mean, throwing another person into the mix is a really, really, really hard, complicated issue here from a choreography standpoint. So he might make an appearance. He may just like pop on stage and just say something and then be back. But it's not going to be like he is part of like the main act anymore.
You're right, Scott. You're right, Scott, because it's a totally independent production staff that does the halftime show as opposed to the game.
And again, it's only 15 minutes, so you've already got that spaced amongst 5 different people to begin with. I mean, that's 3 minutes each if you break it down evenly. That's like literally there's like one song for each person.
So another of the interesting things with Super Bowl, and we know the hype that comes around because that's going to be the marketing awards that of this year, are the commercials. And we are talking that for the first time in a long time since pre-pandemic, there is a huge market for advertising on the Super Bowl. And the latest thing that I have read on it was a 15-second spot goes for $7.5 million. And I was like, holy moly, man. That's a waste of $7.5 million. Only spending
NBC sold it out, though. NBC sold it out.
Yeah. So who do you think are going to be the big winners in the commercial battle?
My guess is probably something with alcohol. Actually, correction. Sports betting.
And
maybe sports betting possibly in there too. Followed by trucks and alcohol.
Don't forget lots of streaming services, and then maybe a movie preview or two.
Possibly that fine network called Peacock. Will be Peacock do it a little bit. We don't want to talk about Paramount Plus because it's a rival network there.
I think the fans will benefit too because they've developed such a fan base for their commercials. I mean, the Budweiser commercials, I know they're not as popular now as they were before, but I think that also the things a dog and a horse, they'll be in there somewhere.
Look, we sound like idiots because if you want to see the commercials, you can spend half an hour, 45 minutes today watching all the commercials before the Super Bowl comes out. They're all already out, released, and available on YouTube, which is so interesting to me that they're now not even premiering their commercials at the Super Bowl for the most part, and yet they spent all that money.
So, actually, for the longest time, they had a show before the Super Bowl, basically highlights of the commercials.
Okay.
CBS used to do that, and I used to watch it. And I don't know, I remember if they showed I think they showed at least parts of all the commercials, but not in their entirety. So it was like a preview. They did a whole show on a preview of the commercials on the Super Bowl. That always impressed me because I loved watching them. Because here in Canada, you guys have the luxury of being in the U.S. Your commercials that you watch, we don't get to watch here. And it's been a debate here. Governments have gotten involved because fans are going, no, we want to see the U.S. commercials. Well, the Canadian government says, no, hang on. Our Canadian commercials have to supersede
Correct
those.
me if I'm wrong. I believe 50% of all your programming has to be Canadian based. Does that also include commercials too?
Yes.
Well, the commercials, what happens is we take your signal and we delete your commercials and put our own in there. That doesn't mean that commercials that you have, like we'll advertise Coke just like you'll have Coke. But the point I'm trying to make is that the advertising is done by Canadian networks here, and they sell the advertising. So we just take the program. And it isn't 50%, I think. Is it 50?
50% was what I understood the TV industry to be. That's why
I can't say that's wrong.
So,
I can't say that's wrong.
So one of the things that now that we are talking programming, because it really surprises me, being that NBC is how do we say, the rights holder to this wonderful event that we are having. They put one of their top shows against the Super Bowl in Celebrity Big Brother, which it's dead center against the halftime show, which it surprises me because Peacock has Celebrity Big Brother today at 8:00 on, and it killed me. I said, I'm taping Celebrity Big Brother because I am following it, but I'm watching the Super Bowl, definitely. But just going into another topic, I think that we have to devote a little bit of time to the wonderful world of honors in the NFL and the awards that just were announced.
I thought you were going to ask about the Puppy Bowl. We have not discussed Puppy Bowl 18, okay? Short answer, Marcus Doolittle.
I'm in on NFL honors.
So we are going to start with the MVP. Yes, Mr. Rogers is a great player. Mr. Rogers is everything the people talk about. But because the awards are voted on prior to the playoffs, does he truly deserve the MVP award if we were looking at a full picture?
Well, historically, Eduardo, the playoffs don't enter into those kinds of awards. That's the issue, and there are a lot of people who don't like that, who think that's a bad idea.
So I know
You're
Scott
welcome. You're welcome, Scott.
Here's the thing. I would prefer something like regular season awards. And you know what? If the best player happens to be on a team that doesn't make the playoffs, let's go ahead and give it to him anyway. And then a playoff award where if the best player's team doesn't reach the Super Bowl, because we're always like, well, because it's always, well, what if you don't make it to the, whatever? Just let it be the best player, whether or not their team makes it. And then you can talk about who was valuable in a 4-game playoff run. Not to mention, I hate the MVP conversation in football anyway. It's the most ridiculous thing. There's 22 guys on the field. And it only takes one of those guys to really just take a crap in the beginning of the season, take an ACL, and your whole team is just nothing. It doesn't matter who your best player is, unless you have one of those quarterbacks who we talked about earlier, which Rodgers is one, which makes me say, hey, probably deserved it, even though his team didn't do well in the playoffs, and he himself was not good in that game in the playoffs. Regular season, I mean, he was the best player, and he overcame something in the regular season. I want to be very careful with not to offend anybody. He missed a game, and he almost missed two, and his team lost that game that he missed. And my opinion was, if they suffer for losing more than one game because he didn't do what he should have done, there was a good reason to hold it against him. But he only missed one game, and he came back and he was fine. He was the best player on a really good team, with all due respect to Tom Brady this year. If we talk about the positions we give this award to, we give to the quarterback and occasionally a running back. Cooper Kupp was probably a more valuable player to his team. I think TJ Watt and Aaron Donald were more valuable to their teams. There's offensive linemen whose names I don't know who carried their team. It's a horrible award. So when they give it, doesn't even bother me.
As a viewer, the problem sometimes I think, and I guess reading between the lines, is that you don't want to have too many MVPs, because then it sort of confuses everything, right? Then all of a sudden you got the MVP of the MVPs. So I think a lot of people don't want to do that kind of stuff. But I like what you said. I think they should have awards for the regular season, and then they should have awards for the playoffs as well. The best playoff performers, and I wouldn't I wouldn't begrudge them doing that, because I guess there could be enough of a black line defining the two different situations. But I can understand, and in fairness to, if you look at it from the player's point of view, right, from all the players' point of view, if you're on a team that sucks but you're a real good player, to not have the equal opportunity to be considered the best during a regular season where everybody participates, rather than include the ones who happen to be on a good team, because we all know a quarterback's great, but it's a team sport. 22 guys. I heard one of you say that, and it's the truth.
So
here's what I'm going to say on this, and I think I want to just elaborate. I just want to add something to Obi's point. Aaron Rodgers took a hit credibility-wise because of what happened with the COVID and everything like that. Ironically enough, it may have actually helped him win the MVP, because him not being in there showed what that team was. And the MVP is about most valuable player to your team. And that might have inadvertently proved it the point further that he was more invaluable to his team than anybody else. I got to give a shout out, by the way. Joe Burrow was third, in the MVP. And I think that's huge for a sophomore quarterback. None of his votes were first place. That's fine. But the fact that he landed at third place twice as much as fourth place overall, which, by the way, is Cooper Kupp and Dak, says a lot to Cincinnati fans and Joe Burrow fans about what the NFL believes he will be in the next 5 to 10 years. Placing third, a bronze medal for a sophomore quarterback, is a hell of a good thing.
now I'll bring another point into that. I mean, you look at the Cardinals and the season they had, considering all factors. I mean, they did have one of the longest winning records to start the season this year. I mean, there is a point to be said for the quarterback of that team. What the great job he did, and when he went down, what the team did after that. I mean, could the Cardinals made it to Super Bowl without that, if he was healthy, completely healthy?
I don't know. They were pretty good without him, weren't they? 3-1.
Yeah. Colt McCoy did okay.
Colt McCoy.
Two and one, I thought, but yeah.
I think if anything, to Scott's point, we saw the difference in value between Rodgers and Murray when we went out. As a matter of fact, when Murray came back is when they really started to slow down. They didn't quite come. Remember Murray's first game back? The first game back with Nook, and they lost that game.
You guys don't. I agree with you both, but don't you think the distraction of him being out and why he was out might have affected the locker room and the coverage of the team? And and not a fair, like, it's one thing when a player gets hurt and he's out, and it's not any kind of political thing, it's not any kind of story outside of he's injured. Now you got a story where you got a guy who a reporter says he's not going to vote for him because he's not a team player. And then, to your point, which you guys are all, you're all right. I mean, I don't disagree at all. Just want to add that little point in, that it's a different distraction. It's not just a distraction that a player isn't playing for your team, but why he isn't playing for your team.
Mhm.
And how about the rest of the players? How do they feel about it? The reporters are on them. Well, you're a guy that, football players, they're creatures of habit. And that wasn't a regular problem that football players, normally have to adjust to, right?
So, guys,
I think you're right. You're right in that. And it'll be interesting if Love edges the quarterback next year, and all of a sudden he's not as bad, and then we can revisit this point. The other thing is, in that story, we already thought Love wasn't what he was supposed to be, right? We already thought he wasn't going to be good, and then he came out and wasn't good. Now, maybe all the factors you just said help distract the rest of the team, and it is a fair argument to make.
So,
It's only an argument, though. There's no facts to back it up.
So we have about 4 minutes left on the show, and we have a couple of. We'll have to make it quick through here. Offensive Player of the Year, Cooper Kupp. Scott, to start.
I don't hate it. I mean, honestly, my vote would have probably been Jonathan Taylor, because in this case, their record when he got 100 yards versus when he didn't was dramatic. I mean, the powerhouse that he was, I think if Derrick Henry was healthy the entire year, I think this would not have been a conversation at all. But Cooper Kupp, as good as he was, I think was a piece of a bigger machine. Jonathan Taylor, I think, was pretty much the machine over there. My take.
I'll give you guys time.
Yeah, I think when you see what Taylor's stats were at the time that the Offensive Player of the Year went down, he didn't compare. He wasn't comparable in the position to Henry when Henry took him like 2 more games to catch Henry's yards. He did start as a fantasy football player. There was early in the season, there was a lot of, he's a bust talk from a dynasty fantasy football perspective. Took him some time to get rolling. Now, he was great at the end. Cooper Kupp was great beginning to end. Yes, he benefited from an extra game for sure, but he won the Triple Crown of receiving. And again, yeah, I think offensively, when we think about it, that's usually how we don't give we usually say, let's not give this to a quarterback because we're giving them the MVP. I guess he's as good as anybody without trying to get into lineman statistics. But by the way, it's just hard to do. But I think the right tackle who went down against for the right tackle, I think his name is Whitmore for Tampa Bay, had one of the great offensive line seasons, and maybe he deserves it. You know me, we don't give any love to offensive linemen. Look at it. Where is the offensive lineman of the year?
That's personal for you, man. That's so personal.
I have to. I'm going to go through the list. We won't have time to make comments because we only have a minute and a half left. I'll go through the list. Defensive Player of the Year, T.J. Watt, the offensive linebacker from the Steelers. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jamar Chase. We'll see him play this afternoon. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys. Comeback Player of the Year, Joros, definitely. Coach of the Year, Mike Brabell from the Tennessee Titans. That I have my opinion on that one, but those are the awards for this year. I think that there have to be, as Obi said, maybe we should have 2 sets of formats, one for the playoffs, one for regular season, and Coach of the Year should be the last one based on the whole amalgamation of everything, not just what you did prior to the season, to the playoffs. Because if you are a guy that took the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl, I think that should take recognition as well. I'm
going to disagree. I think Vrabel, even through the playoffs, was the Coach of the Year. He does this with Tannehill. His defense, his players sacked that quarterback 9 times. That's on his
And
players now. There's some
And
games
Nick Henry for most of the year too.
yeah. That some
And still
games you
got
look and
first
you
overall.
go, the players didn't do the job. Other games you look at the coach didn't do the job. And I think Vrabel was there for that Tennessee game. His team, his players, and his quarterback didn't get it done for him. So I'm all for Vrabel on this one.
So with that last burst of energy from Obi, we are going to say thank you very much to our guest, Mr. Candy Frank Snishi. We are going to also.
Bengals.
I have to thank my two co-hosts on this show, Mr. Obi Spencer and Mrs. Scott Churchson.
Rams 27-23.
To everybody in the NFL world, this has
Dirty
been
27.
another great show of the NFL Insiders. We will be back next week to review what happened Super Bowl Sunday and to start doing the analysis of what's coming up through the wonderful days of winter for the camps and NCAA drafts and everything that we have to look at. But until then, this has been the NFL Insiders brought to you here on Singles TV channel 249 and 250. Remember to please go back to the iOS and Android stores to leave us a comment and a rating. We always like to hear from our listeners and our viewers to see how we can improve the show. But until then, please remember to go to our website, SpanglishSportsWorld.com, to read the stories by our great analysts like Scott Churchson, Mr. Frank Stanishi, and Mr. Obi Spencer. And until then, please remember, the NFL Insiders, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, but especially live it, because the NFL Insiders is football, and football is the NFL Insiders. Until next week, we bid you farewell, and thank you very much for watching our show.